Hey everyone, welcome back to another gaming news recap. This week we finally got official confirmation from Blizzard. Overwatch 2 is not a sequel, it's just an update and will be replacing the original Overwatch. I can't wait to get into this one. Also, Blizzard hired the entire Spellbreak team to work on the World of Warcraft. Skull and Bones is rumored to be launching this year. We check out the super impressive Fallout London mod. Go over why Steam's most wishlisted game is searching for unpaid volunteers. We also got an update for Ashes of Creation, in addition to a few other PSAs, some new game reveals, and recent releases. Before diving into this week's top stories though, let's get a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by DNF Duel. This marks the return of one of the most popular and widely played RPGs in the world, Dungeon and Fighter, but now it's back as a 2.5D action fighting game. Choosing from one of 16 characters, each with their own distinct skills and personalities, you'll compete in Smash-style fighting as you try to outsmart, outplay, and beat your opponent into submission. The game features the use of rollback netcode to ensure a low lag and seamless multiplayer experience around the world. It's got simplified online matchmaking where opponents are continuously matched just by queuing up, and it features all of the modes that any fighting game should have, such as a story mode, practice, survival, arcade mode, and quite a bit more. They're calling this a Smash-style fighting game and says it's got intuitive command inputs, features the latest in 2.5D style fighting game graphics, and has a really neat looking art style with some flashy skill effects. DNF Duel is available to play now. You can check it out using the link in the description below. Ever since its announcement, the joke about Overwatch 2 has been to call it Overwatch 1.5, which all stem from the fact that not quite enough appeared to be changing or was different between the two games to actually classify it as a sequel. Well, sometimes memes turn into dreams, and now it's official. When Overwatch 2 launches this October, it will straight up just replace the original Overwatch, meaning that that game, as it stands right now, will be no more. You will not be able to play Overwatch one day and then boot up Overwatch 2 the next day. No, Overwatch 2 will be the only Overwatch that exists. This information comes from a Reddit AMA where someone asked why the October release was being referred to as early access and what that would mean for the original game Overwatch. Game director Aaron Keller responded by saying this: "We're using the term early access to indicate that this is just the start of many new things coming to the game. We're launching with new heroes, maps, and features, but there are even more of those coming seasonally every 9 weeks. We recently released a roadmap detailing some of this content with a new hero coming in seasons 1 and 2 and a new map in season 2. Additionally, larger pieces of the game that have always been part of the vision for Overwatch 2 will be released to the game as part of a live service, including the launch of the PvE campaign next year." And finally, he wrapped up by saying when Overwatch 2 launches on October 4th, it will be a replacement for the current live service. And there it is, that old joke of Overwatch 2 not being a sequel and just being an update for the base Overwatch. It is now reality. That is the world we live in. It is actually just an update, which also basically confirms that naming the game Overwatch 2 was pure marketing, when in reality what we're getting is just Overwatch 2.0, but saying that you have a big patch for the existing game is way less exciting than saying that you're releasing a sequel. Now, you might say, what's the fuss? Like, who cares whether they call it Overwatch 2 instead of saying Overwatch 2.0? Are we really that bothered by a decimal point and a zero? I don't know, yes and no. Like, ultimately, I don't care. It's just worth calling out, I think. Whatever they call this thing, an update, a release of a sequel, an early access, whatever. I guess really what it boils down to is the content. So if you're curious what exactly is the content, if you haven't been keeping up with it, Overwatch 2, when it enters early access on October 4th, will be getting the following. The game is going to be changing to a free-to-play live service title, so there will be no more box price. As such, the game will now also have seasons, as mentioned in that quote. These will be free updates that come out every 9 weeks, adding new content. So in season 1, they're adding 3 new heroes, 6 new maps, a new game mode, as well as over 30 cosmetic skins and a battle pass. Now, subsequent seasons will have quite a bit less content. A lot of this is front-loaded for the early access release of Overwatch 2, but also we have changes like PvP shifting to 5 vs 5 from 6 vs 6. To go along with that, they did some reworking of the game's heroes, and they also removed loot loot boxes, which on its face is a good thing. It gets rid of the paying money for random rewards. As for the PvE experience, which was one of the biggest original selling points of Overwatch 2, apparently that will be coming at some point in 2023, although there is no specific time frame beyond that. I'm going to be very curious to see how well or not Overwatch 2 does. It appears like there really isn't too much excitement for this online. I don't see a lot of buzz from various communities that I frequent. And while you could rightfully say that places like Reddit or the forums or Twitter make up a very small piece of the overall gaming player base, this is a far cry from the hype around the game when it first launched in 2016. At that point, I mean, Overwatch was literally everywhere. You could not go to any corner of the gaming internet and not see something about Overwatch. That's not the case here. I guess part of that was because it was a brand new, good, and fun to play game, and people were excited to try the newest IP from Blizzard. But this time around, I am not seeing anywhere near the level of enthusiasm and excitement that we saw for when Overwatch first launched. It could just simply boil down to the fact that too little has changed and that it's not really a sequel. Personally, I doubt I'm going to revisit the game this fall. Not enough has changed in my eyes that it feels like anything different from what I played, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. I mean, I know there are changes. I listed many of them off, and there are many more granular things that I didn't even bring up here, but it still feels like so much of the same game that I just don't care to check it out. Whether it's a 2 or a 2.0, however you want to classify it, I don't feel like any pull towards checking it out. However, once that PvE stuff comes out in 2023, that I'm a lot more interested in seeing what they have done for it. Either way, though, I can't wait till the release of Overwatch Classic in 10 years or so. In other Blizzard news, the company recently revealed they'll be acquiring Spellbreak developer Proletariat. Specifically, the entire team is being brought over to help work on the World of Warcraft. Now, Spellbreak was an action combat battle royale that, instead of weapons, focused on the use of magic, and it had a rather unique combat system and was also fairly well regarded. People seem to have liked this game, despite the fact that it never picked up any substantial player base. The game peaked at launch around 5,500 concurrent players. That has since dropped down to sub 100, and they recently revealed they will be shutting down servers in early 2023. Regardless of Spellbreak's lack of success, Blizzard clearly liked enough about the game and what the team did to hire all 100 plus employees. Now, what will they be doing? Again, as I mentioned, they'll be working on WoW, and according to Blizzard, this will be to help, quote, hit quality and timing goals for its expansions, which if you asked the WoW community, Blizz could use a little help with this. Apparently, this shift actually occurred a couple of months ago. In May, they began working to bolster the upcoming Dragonflight expansion. Now, it's time for me to put on my tinfoil hat. Spellbreak was a third-person action combat game. World of Warcraft is a tab-targeting MMO. What if, and hear me out here, what if part of the reason they're onboarding a team of over 100 people who made an action combat game is to assist in the porting of WoW to consoles? For a long time now, the game has actually been playable with a controller, using mods like console port in conjunction with the in-game supported action cam, making WoW play much more like an action game. Still obviously has tab targeting as its base, but it feels, looks, and functions very much like an action title. Many of the pieces for WoW to be playable on consoles have been in place for a lot of years. Combine that with Microsoft's recent acquisition of Blizzard, and I'm not saying that a WoW console port is happening, I'm just saying it's possible that it could be happening, which basically means I'm not really saying anything. I don't know, having tried WoW with a controller myself, I will say it was actually pretty cool. Whether or not it ever gets officially supported, well, time will tell. We learned earlier this year that Ubisoft's pirate sailing game Skull and Bones was still in the works, despite being revealed over 5 years ago and seemingly stuck in development hell with several major overhauls. The game is still a go. In fact, it now seems like Skull and Bones is nearly finished and will be coming out later this year. Apparently, sometime very soon, Ubisoft will be re-revealing the game, sharing new details, showing off updated gameplay, and even giving a release date. It is rumored word that this re-reveal event will be occurring as early as this upcoming week, which is pretty exciting stuff. Now, further bolstering these rumors is the fact that a data miner recently found a release date for Skull and Bones on the Xbox Store, which was scheduled for November 8th. This information was seemingly confirmed by industry insider Tom Henderson, who has a record of breaking news before it becomes official, and I have found to be a fairly reliable source for these kind of early reveals. If all of this holds up, we will be learning and seeing more about the game very, very soon, which I'm looking forward to. I think the game's premise is pretty cool. It's like a standalone version of Assassin's Creed ship combat. In theory, that could be fun. Now, the timing of all of this is made a little bit less exciting by the fact that Ubisoft just recently came out to announce the decommissioning of online services for numerous multiplayer games. Assassin's Creed 2, 3, Brotherhood, Liberation, and Revelations, Far Cry 3, Ghost Recon Future Soldier, Splinter Cell Blacklist, and a handful of other titles are all no longer going to be playable online in the not too distant future. In some instances, for the multiplayer only games, they will be literally dead. It'll just be impossible to play them. Now, once again, I implore the game industry, when things like this comes up, give us a way of keeping these old online-only games still alive and playable by people, even if it's as simple as making it not illegal for fan-run servers. If nothing else, at least let the fans of these games bolster them being playable. Remember not too long ago when we pointed out the fact that the next Fallout game was probably 10 or so years away, with Todd Howard having confirmed its development wouldn't even begin until after The Elder Scrolls 6? Well, if you don't feel like waiting that long for a new Fallout experience, I've got some good news for you. Say hello to Fallout London, a DLC-sized mod for Fallout 4 that, according to its developers, is a continuation of the base game that allows players to visit the previously unexplored post-apocalyptic environment of London. Can I just say, this looks really, really good. And now I'm always impressed with what the modding community comes up with in Bethesda titles. And this is just one of those examples of a team taking things to the next level. This is a massive brand new Fallout experience set in London, which includes a condensed version of the city's main boroughs with all new NPCs, all new quests, all new locations, all new voice acting, pretty much all new everything. In fact, if you had told me that this was an official expansion for Fallout 4, I probably would have believed you. Fallout London's development was first revealed a few years back. They've been releasing fairly regular updates and just recently announced a target release date of 2023. The Fallout community seems super excited, but also apparently Bethesda has been paying attention. They recently offered several members of the mod team jobs at the studio. Some of them accepted, some declined to continue working on the mod, but either way, this is a pretty darn cool story. And yeah, if you're wanting a more Fallout experiences, check out this mod when it comes out next year. Okay, here's a fun story. Despite being the most wishlisted game on all of Steam, The Day Before is in search of unpaid volunteers to help develop the game. There are open positions for two types of volunteers, full and part-time. According to the website, full-time volunteers work for salaries, aka they get paid, but their numbers are limited. In fact, I just checked, none of those paid positions are currently available. However, don't worry, because the part-time volunteer positions in which anybody can contribute to the fantastic community and get cool rewards, participation certificates, and free codes. The listing goes on to say that these quote position duties include various activities ranging from translating to community moderating. Part-time volunteers can also offer their unique skills to improve our projects or create new special features. Now, this isn't an entirely new or even unheard of concept. Basically, they're looking for unpaid interns, right? That is more or less what this is. I think the funny part, of course, is the fact that this is the most wish-listed game on Steam, and they're looking for unpaid help. Now, one would assume working on a game with this level of anticipation would come with, oh, I don't know, a paycheck instead of participation certificates. What are those? And free game codes. What? Now, after news of this broke, the developer posted a video response on their YouTube channel in which they said, being a volunteer means that you willingly take part in working for a common cause. Volunteering means that in every action you take, you bring a certain pleasantness. What are they talking about? You are making a game, not a Hallmark card. Pay the people working on your game to make the game. Hello? This is just another thing piled onto the ever-growing list of concerns surrounding The Day Before and its developer. Even as someone who prefers to remain optimistic about games and upcoming titles, the red flags and sirens are far too much to ignore on this one. I might be covering this a bit more in depth later this week, but I wanted to just mention and point out how ridiculous this all is. It is the most wishlisted game on Steam. Why aren't they paying the... I would understand if this was a scrap indie developer who needed help putting together a fan project, like, I don't know, Fallout London's mod. You guys tell me you can't get funding as the most wishlisted game on Steam? We got an update for upcoming MMO Ashes of Creation. During last week's live stream, they showcased some major overhauls to the game's combat, which was probably one of my biggest gripes with the game after getting hands-on time with the alpha last year. I thought combat felt floaty and unresponsive, but you know, since it was an alpha test, my hope was that things would improve. Well, it seems that they have. The developer stream focused on melee combat in particular, showcasing both the two-handed sword and daggers. Of note are things like improved animations and sounds, the overall feel and weight of attacks getting improved. They also touched on some other elements like zoom distance and weapon balance. And overall, I think the combat looks way better than it did previously. Things are still a bit choppy on the animation front. It clearly needs some polish. They're still just an alpha. Technically, I think it's alpha 2 at the moment. Also, can I say that the whole thing, everything about it looks miles better than it did last year. Visuals across the board have made a significant leap from what I played 11 or so months ago. It's really looking great. But the biggest selling point of Ashes are the systems and mechanics within it. They're bringing some very cool ideas to the MMO space, some of which are borrowed, some of which feel fairly fresh. If they can deliver on the gameplay front and bring everything together, I think it could be a pretty good game. Although we are still likely 2, 3, maybe even 4 years away from launch, so don't expect to be playing the final version of this anytime soon. A couple of new game reveals I want to touch on. First up is Harvestella, a fantasy life simulation RPG from Square Enix. You'll make a character and then try to keep them alive, building up a farm, tilling the land, planting and watering seeds, tending to it, and eventually harvesting your crops. The game is also one of those old school inspired titles with an overworld map. You got a character that's going to run around exploring locations, zoning into places. There'll be enemy encounters that you'll engage with this dynamic action combat system. It all looks very Square Enix to me. There's also going to be changing seasons that impact the entire world. It's also a narrative RPG, so there'll be plenty of characters, dialogue, cutscenes, things like that. This game is coming to Switch and Steam on November 4th. I think it could be cool. Kind of looks like a Final Fantasy game, but with some life sim stuff. I don't know. It does look like 10 years old or so, but it's a Switch game as well, so that probably explains it. This next game was technically revealed like 2 weeks ago, but I missed it. And apparently a lot of other people did too. I haven't heard anyone talk about it. It's called Once Human. It is a new open world survival game. I think looks pretty slick. It's gonna have a lot of the standard survival elements, gathering, crafting, and base building. It's also a third-person shooter, but the biggest thing of note is clearly the setting. It takes place in, I guess we'll call it like an alternate dimension, and has all sorts of these crazy looking creatures, massive enemies with really funky design. Some of the gameplay they showed did look a little rough around the edges, but I thought the overall design of the game and the trailers that they showcased was interesting enough and really caught my attention. So you can currently register to test the game yourself over on their website, and the developer has said that a PC release date will be announced sometime soon. Maybe the biggest reason that no one's talking about this is because it's a NetEase game, but NetEase or not, I like a bunch of what I see here. Okay, a couple quick PSAs before we wrap things up here. We got an update video letting us know that Skate is still in production and it's looking really cool, I gotta say. There was also an overview trailer for Redfall released, showing off some gameplay clips and then covering some of the game's main features like multiple playable classes, customization, progression, solo and squad play. I still like this game, even though it seems like not many people are too interested. I will check out anything from this developer. And then also we got confirmation that the sci-fi open world RPG Tower of Fantasy, which is totally not Genshin Impact, nope. This plans to get a global release later this year. I'm going to be covering this game actually in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And then also, as a heads up, recently we saw the release of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, the Outriders World Slayer expansion, and Cuphead's DLC. And with that, we will wrap up this week's news. Thank you as always so much for watching. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.